is Teresa and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be me fixing my necklace. It's going to be me discussing the books that were disappointments in 2022. Note that I did not say they were the worst. They were just not living up to the hype that either I had in my head, or people had in their head, or in some cases, marketing had in their head. So to kind of get into it, this is going to be in no particular order, but I feel like if you guys have watched my vlogs, kept up with me this past year, you guys know which ones are going to pop up on here and which one's probably going to be the most disappointing. So let's go. So I'm not going to lie, I'm feeling kind of lazy, so I will not be pulling up. I don't have the books on me because I have to go through all of this, and I have to move a bunch of plants and a bunch of other trinkets. Like, look at this cute little gel candle my cousin got me for Christmas. And quite frankly, I'm not in the mood to do all that. But let's start off with the first book, and that is Midnight Sun. Again, this is in no particular order, so if you see this and you're like, this is not the worst book I read at the top of it at all. But if you haven't followed me for a while, then you probably know which one's the worst books that I've read all year, because I have probably vocalized it on a review, in a vlog, in a wrap-up. But the first book on this disappointing list is actually Midnight Sun, I was thinking of the video game, by Stephenie Meyer. This is a YA paranormal romance following, well, you guys all know what Twilight is. It follows young Bella Swan as she moves to Forks, Washington, and finds out about the world of vampires and that she may or may not or is in love with one. This is the first book of Twilight in Edward's point of view. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I listened to the audiobook. I was intrigued to see what was going to happen, simply because I wanted to see more of like Edward's perspective and what he was doing throughout all this, because most of Bella's perspective is very introspective and very much like focused and in there and all that stuff. I didn't hate this book. I love seeing parts of Edward's perspective, but it was frightening. It was frightening. It wasn't even like, oh, he's a stalker. It was more so like he just like sat there and like, there were some scenes that were too long. There were some scenes I wanted more of, like I wanted more of his time in Alaska, and I felt like I was gypped of the said time. I didn't want a ton of scenes of him stalking her relentlessly, and yet here we are. But we got all those scenes. Some scenes were way too long, like the baseball scene, which is one of my favorite scenes in the book and the movie. Too long. Like, it was a descriptive, like, play-by-play of how, like, Alice bent her elbow for a paragraph. Then the scene when they try to get to Bella in Phoenix, it was just too long, too much going on, and at the same time not enough. And I would have much rather preferred like maybe like the continuation of the series in Edward's perspective, some of him like struggling with fatherhood, with the fact that Jacob is now tied to their family for the rest of their lives, something. But this was not it. I just felt like it was, I wanted more, but instead I got a psychopathic, stalkerish vampire that still feels like he's being romanticized in the novel, and I don't get how, but it is. And I'm just like, too long, too much. I'm good. I probably won't be continuing on with the rest of like the Midnight Sun reiterations of the books. Maybe Eclipse. No, actually I might see New Moon, just because it was the book where we saw the least of Edward, so I want to see what he was up to. But even then, it's probably going to be like 6 pages of him laying there and describing how the dust looked as it moved across the room. Probably one of the disappointments that I was like hoping it wasn't going to be, but yet it was. So here we are. The next disappointment is actually Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. This is a pretty like well-known book around like the Greek mythology retellings. This is basically following all of the girls, specifically I think Briseis, during the Trojan War. I forgot what rate. I think I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. It was a very mid book. I've had this book on my TBR for a few years now. I've had it hyped up in my head for so long, so very long, that now that I read it, it was just very mid. This is kind of the problem that I'm running into in terms of like Greek retellings from the woman's perspective, is because in the original myth themselves, not only was it written by a man, but there was not a lot going on, like not a lot of development from the characters unless they were like a major player, like someone who was like brutally harmed by the gods or was an actual goddess themselves. So I found that while I was intrigued by Briseis' side of the story and to see how everything occurred in the Trojan War from a woman's perspective, it just kind of felt a little flat to me. I felt like, obviously these are prisoners of war. There's no lovey-dovey romance. There's nothing going on here. She was a prisoner of war and was basically like a war prize. She was given away. She was a war prize. So the issue that I found was that she didn't have a lot of personality, and I just wanted to see more rage, a lot more sorrow, a lot more contemplation, a lot more just like of those like heavier emotions that I think would occur should you like have watched. She literally watched her entire family get brutally murdered by a good chunk of them by Achilles himself, and she was given to Achilles as a war prize. So I would have just loved to have seen that rage, that kind of like confusion in the fact that I'm assuming that toward the end of it she was like kind of like humanize them a little bit from the monsters to like that they are people who are just kind of like fighting a war. They weren't some nameless soldier. Like not so much that to humanize like the abuser, but I just wanted to see more emotion from her. I felt like she was just like a quiet observer in the sense that she had no real opinion. She was just like, she let things happen to her, and I just felt like she just was very flat, and I wanted to see more. It was something I ran into with another book that's on this list, is that everything just happened to her, and I know that a lot of things just, you know, when you're a prisoner of war and you are like a prize, things do like physically just happen to you, but her emotions just weren't there. She just felt very numb to me, and I don't know. I wanted more from her, because I think in Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, we do get to see Briseis through Patroclus' eyes. And Briseis in that book had a lot more spunk to her, was a little bit more like I guess like fully developed. So to go from that version of Briseis to like this very flat like observer, like no fight to her whatsoever, no like anger or anguish over losing everything that she had once known, was just like it was just meh. It was just meh. And I was very disappointed. I don't know, I've heard really good things about Pat Barker's almost like sequel novel, which is another set of stories or another perspective from a different point of view. I forgot who we're seeing in that one. So I might pick it up in the future, but I don't know. I was just like, I wanted to see so much more from Briseis herself, and I wanted to see like someone with some spunk and like personality, and it just felt very flat to me. I was very disappointed. The next one is My Policeman by Bethan Roberts. This is an adult historical fiction novel following a couple, Tom and Marion. The two of them are married. Marion is like deeply in love with Tom. The two of them get married, all this stuff, but then Tom starts to show affection for Patrick, and things kind of ensue from there, implying like a very secretive relationship between Tom and Patrick. All this stuff. Harry Styles is now starring in this movie on Amazon Prime. I want to watch it, but overall this book kind of fell flat for me. This is set in 1960s England. It's obviously a lot of taboo. You could get arrested for being gay during the time. I just felt like that I didn't connect a ton with, not so much Mary. I liked Marion's perspective. I liked Patrick's perspective when we saw it, but I was just not connected to the idea that these two beautiful people with their own hearts and minds were just attracted to Tom. To me, Tom in of itself felt like a very flat character. He felt very uncaring toward Marion, just more so like he married her out of convenience because, you know, he couldn't be with the one he loved, and he had showed very little respect toward her and their relationship and her feelings. Patrick got to see more of like who Tom actually is, and at the end of it, it still felt very flat for me. He just, like, I feel like both Marion and Patrick in the novel projected a lot of Tom's personality onto Tom, or what they thought Tom was as a person. I didn't see Tom, this main focal point of like this like love triangle, really shine through the pages, and I was just very disappointed in the fact that like Patrick risked everything for him, and you know, went through all these things, and Marion went through like decades of heartbreak for this man, and he just felt really flat and very like not caring. I've heard that Harry Styles does a good job in the movie, so I'm kind of hoping that if I ever watch the movie, Tom will come to life more for me, but in the book he just felt very flat, and I was just sitting here like, listen, if I were Patrick, I probably wouldn't risk it all for this man. Like, I'd probably see him and just feel like he is a shy little thing and probably nothing. Because if it really did, like how the book was written, I felt like Marion was creating this like charismatic person in her mind, and he was just this beautifully charismatic, happy-go-lucky kind of man who was like very introspective. And then Patrick projected on this man who was super eloquent with the paintings that he saw and the thoughts and the art that they were viewing. And then when I read it, I just felt like I knew nothing about Tom as a person or why either one of them would fall in love with him. It just felt like they were just like each falling in love with separate ideas of him. And I don't know. I truly don't know. It was very odd. I was not a fan, clearly, saw in this video. And I don't know. Hopefully I watched the movie because Jake's aunt, we talked about the movie when we visited them, and she said that she never read the book, but she said that he came to life more. He felt more like tangible in the movie, and that it felt like he was in love with both of them equally, which I didn't get from the book. So maybe the movie will be different. Hopefully I'll enjoy it, but I was just like not the biggest fan of this book because Tom itself just felt like such a flat character. And like, if there's one thing when it comes to like romance novels, historical romance novels, or even like just like love triangles in general, I need like the focal point of the romance to be the most interesting thing. Because if I'm sitting here trying to convince myself that yeah, a beautiful woman and a very intelligent man would fall in love with the same person, and that same person reciprocates the same feelings, I need more personality out of this person, and I didn't feel that from Tom. So I was just like, by the end of the book, I was like so happy to be done, because I was like, these two people sacrificed so much and put so much of their stuff on the line for this man, and there are just no feelings from him. He was as flat as a piece of paper, as flimsy as one too, and I was just like, okay, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine. The next one is actually Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. This is a YA retelling of Ariadne, the one who kind of, I believe, helped Jason get out of the labyrinth using the little string and such. Yes, the string and such, and then proceeded to be abandoned in a thing. Now, I also give this a 3 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy the book because it gave a new perspective on Persephone, on Ariadne. But my issue is similar to the one with Silence of the Girls. While I love the idea of giving these oftentimes these women in Greek mythology who just had harm done to them as a way to move the hero forward, I just felt like she fell super flat. Like, things were just happening to Ariadne, and there was just no fight to this girl. Like, she was raised by a cruel man. She saw her mother lose herself because of something the gods had done. She watched her brother abused as a weapon. Her sisters just like become completely different people to her, and I just think that I would have given this book the 5 stars I desperately wanted to give it had we had seen more of Ariadne's personality. I feel like we saw a little bit of her personality toward the end of the novel, when I feel like the author got a bit more of a grasp on how she wanted Ariadne to sound, to feel, to understand things. But then by the beginning and the middle of the novel, things were just happening to her, and she not only accepted it, but then she just didn't feel much out of it, is how my brain was seeing it as I was reading the book. And I just felt like she just felt very flat to me. And I really, like I said, I really do enjoy the concept of like giving women in Greek mythology a voice. But within that, I feel like there seems to be a lack of developing personality, or I guess like a perspective, not a voice, in these myths. But with that, I feel like they're just lacking the personality that I wanted them to have. Like, I haven't read much of Ariadne because, again, in the actual mythology, she's just a character to help Jason push forward. And in the book, I expected her to have like a bit more life to her, have something in her that made like give her that fight to rebel. And it wasn't just the concept of like falling in love with a man that changed her entire life. I wanted something else to be there. And I don't know, it wasn't there, and I just wish it was. Next was one that Hersa put on this list, and that is A Betrayal of Storms by Violet Allers. This is an adult high fantasy novel following Fae, where a young man gets captured and finds out that he is kind of like an heir to a throne, essentially, because of his missing mother. I had really high hopes for this. If you guys know me, I love Ben Alderson. I've read a ton of his books. I haven't read some of his recent work because Betrayal of Storms just kind of put like a little fun taste in my mouth. But I really love his novels, and I love everything about his writing style. I don't know what it is about this one. I read it, and I think I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. The pacing was weird. I felt like the romance was a little odd in there. Like, I don't know. It was just like, I wanted it to be this grand, beautiful novel, But then when I read it, I felt like it was just kind of missing something that tied it all together, that made it kind of like, gave it that oomph that like I loved from his YA work. It just, like, it felt really flat for me, and I don't think that it was supposed to. It had a lot of things happening within like the first 30% of the book, then the next like 90? No, that's not math. That's not correct math at all, Therese. In the next like 70% of the book, I felt like it was just missing something. I felt like the world itself was magical and it was beautiful, but then the romances fell short, and there were so many aspects of the world building that just like didn't click for me. And not in the sense like I don't understand it, like, as in like I feel like it was just like random pieces floating in the air that you just kind of put together, grabbed and put together in the basket, and it didn't like fit together as a puzzle. I really had high hopes for this book. I really wanted this book to be so much more, and I will probably continue to buy Ben Alderson books, but I don't think I'll be continuing on with this specific storyline, because I feel like the storyline was just kind of missing something for me, which made me very sad, because I loved Ben Alderson's books so much. He was like one of my favorite authors from like 2020 and 2021. To have him on this list like physically hurts my soul. The next one is Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me by Mariko Tamaki and Valerie Rose O'Connell. This is a YA graphic novel following Freddie, who keeps coming back to her very toxic ex-girlfriend Laura Dean, and the kind of process of that. I enjoyed it for the fact that it showed unhealthy like queer relationships. I feel like oftentimes we lose ourselves in the narrative that LGBT relationships are healthy. I feel like that's how it feels like. It's like when we talk about it on the internet, you know, nothing can go wrong. You get with your person and it's perfect from point A to point Z all the way down. So I like the fact that it showed a very toxic and unhealthy relationship. The art was beautiful. I just felt like it was missing something, and that there were so many like branches going on in this very short graphic novel. I read this book in about the span of an hour, and I felt like there were too many plot points that just got awkwardly resolved. I wanted there to be a stronger focus on Freddie and her getting the strength to leave her relationship, and her getting having to fix those broken friendships that she left behind because she was so hyper-focused on this that she forgot about her other friends. But I also wanted her friends to be stronger in their support for her and not just shut her out like they did. I feel like there were so many weird little plot points that involved her friends that were integrated into the storyline a little too late, and put a little emphasis a little too much just to show Freddie how shitty she had been, which I don't know. I feel like the message behind it was good, but the plot points itself felt like it could have been spread out into more books. Like had you wanted, like how I would have written it, no knock on the authors, but how I would have preferred it written is that the first book was just focusing on her relationship with Laura Dean. Freddie struggling to figure out like why Laura Dean keeps doing this, why they can't seem to find a groove, her slowly pulling away from her friends because she's so like focused on the fact that Laura Dean just doesn't love her the way she loves her. Yes. And then coming to the realization that it's nothing to do with her, it's just that Laura Dean in itself is a very toxic person, and starting to pull away from that and slowly breaking free. Then the second graphic novel will be her realizing that she had like pushed away all of her friends, and maybe getting a little angry and a little sad about that and not sure what to do, and then slowly patching up her friendships and maybe like slowly introducing a new love interest, which was kind of tried to be introduced in the book but then never like expanded upon, which is weird to me. And then I also wanted probably something involving like the plot line that was included with her best friend, where she's like, oh my god, I've been a terrible friend, and then her friend also coming back and saying, I've also been a terrible friend, because while we were both wrapped up in each other, that shouldn't have stopped us from supporting each other. Because when you have friends in a toxic and unhealthy relationship, you can't quit on them cold turkey. You have to love them through it and hope that maybe they get the strength to leave and choose better for themselves. So I would have wanted that. And then the third book, it could have been her starting to fall in love with again, and Laura Dean trying to squeeze her way back into the romance and being like, no, you're supposed to be mine. And because she has re-solidified her friendships and become a better person, we get to see Laura Dean say goodbye, or Freddie say goodbye to Laura Dean with the help of her friends, and finally move on to like a stronger and healthier relationship. But that's just me. And if someone's gonna take that storyline and run with it, I would like rights. Just telling y'all now. But yeah, I just felt like the book itself was just like there were too many things going on at the same time, and at the same time not enough. So I would have really liked to have seen more expansion, or just taken out some storylines and just made it a very like straight to the point graphic novel. The next one is Sorcerer of the Wild Deeps by Kai Ashante Wilson. Still pressed that all of y'all, since I bought this book in 2019, none of y'all said it was Wild Deeps. I kept saying it was Wild Peeps. But this is an adult high fantasy novel following a young demigod who is in kind of like a troop of men, and they are asked to explore the dangerous deeps, wild deeps, where not very men or women have come out of. I really had high hopes for this novella. I loved the concept. I loved the LGBT representation. I loved that romance. And when I got into the book, I liked the fact that we had AAVE in the novel. My biggest thing was that the world building was just not there. I read through the novella and I felt completely lost. I didn't understand the magic system. I didn't understand the plot development. I didn't understand the world or what was going on. And when we got to the very end, I just felt very disconnected with everything because I just had no clue, no concept, no rhyme or reason of what exactly was here. I felt like that given for this novella, it probably should have been a larger work. I would have preferred to have seen this novel or novella as an actual novel, because I think it would have given more to the lushness of this of the setting, and it would have given us more time to connect with each character and the romance that was going on there, the pining, everything in between. I would have loved to have seen that more in a larger work, because I feel like in this novella it does not do it justice, and I ended up being really disappointed with the fact that this novella was just very brief, which is like the point of a novella. But I feel like since it's supposed to be this big lush thing, the word count should have been used a little bit more. Like the word count should have been, things should have been knocked down a bit more to be able to adjust for the word count. So either you sacrifice a little bit of the world building, a little bit of the magic system, the vastness of it all, something to adjust for the fact that you have such a short word count. But I feel like it just kind of squeezed everything in and tried to make the word count fit with the world instead of trying to make the world fit within the word count, if that makes sense. So I was just like, I wanted it to be more. I am gonna, if Kai Ashante Wilson has any more novels that they have published, because I don't know their pronoun, I probably will pick them up, because I was really enjoying the premise behind this book. I just felt like it was too short and I wanted more out of it. I wanted more development, which you will never get out of a novella. I feel like this world that requires more development, more digging in there. But I was just very sad that it was not the case. The second to last book on this very disappointing list is Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo. This is a YA high fantasy spin-off of the original Grishaverse. It follows Nikolai and Zoya and all the people that were left behind. I did an entire vlog of this, so if you want to see my thoughts, all of my thoughts, I will leave that listed for y'all down below, and any other vlog that these books may have appeared in over the year, or a review. If there was a book, if there was a process that could single-handedly ruin, destroy a fantasy series for me to the point where I just kind of look at it and like wrinkle my nose, it would be this formula. I think Leigh Bardugo wanted to do something here and wanted to give us more Nikolai content, because we had all just adored him from the first set of books, which I don't blame her because I love Nikolai. But I feel like in doing so, she sacrificed a lot of the strength of the characters from the other books. We sacrificed Nina's character and her process of grieving and all the things that come with it. We sacrificed Nikolai's character. We sacrificed the Darkling. We sacrificed David. We sacrificed Genya. We sacrificed a lot of it for what felt like a very fan servicey fanfic. I don't think the Darkling deserved what he got in this book. I don't think he should have been brought back at all. I just feel like it ruined the universe for me, and it ruined so many of my favorite characters. The plot was kind of going every which way all at once. I couldn't connect with any of them at all. I felt like they were all just very separate and just not there. Like there was no connection at all. I didn't understand, like My favorite scenes were with Zoya, and she was there maybe like a third of the time because we had other point of views to listen from. But I love Zoya, and I wanted to see more of Zoya, and she was like the shining star of this book. But we just lost a lot of like character development and character like plot and a lot of like world building from the creation of this duology. It ruined the entirety of the Grishaverse for me, and part of me just wants to reread it so maybe I can feel something positive toward the series again instead of just looking at it and feeling major ick. I just was not a fan. I wish she had just stopped with Six of Crows and left it. We didn't need another duology. King of Scars was supposed to be a book about Nikolai, and we got no Nikolai on it. Rule of Wolves was something else entirely and completely deviated from what I thought the plot was going to go. And I just wanted more from Leigh Bardugo because I know she's capable of such beautiful writing and beautiful development. But then we get this hot mess, and it really just did feel like she created this duology just for the sake of creating more money. And I very rarely want to say I think that's what series continuations of series are, because I literally have like a shelf and a half of Cassandra Clare. I'm probably gonna buy like the sequel to the prequel to They Both Die at the End. Like, to me, as long as the book is written well, I don't care if it's like a continuation of something. But this was just not written well. Things were missing, things had been changed. Lore I felt like was different, and I don't know, like I had such high hopes for this, but the hopes are now gone, and I just want to lay down. And the last book on this list is Youngblood by Sasha Lawrence. I received an arc of this book, and I read it for my first 24-hour readathon. Leave that link down below for us. I had high hopes for this book. This is a YA dark academia with vampires and two best friends who became enemies, who became friends, who became lovers. It's everything I wanted. It's gay. And it has vampires. But this book follows young Kat who wants to feel like a normal vampire. She doesn't want to live with the humans anymore, so she goes against her mom's back and applies for a prestigious school that her mom once attended, I believe, and gets in due to a mysterious benefactor. There she finds out that her roommate is actually her like worst enemy, who also happened to be her previous best friend back in the day, and the two of them spark up a relationship. I made a whole, I think, like 20-minute rant review on this book. 20 minutes. Wasted a lot of air in these lungs to scream about this book. I read this book and did a play-by-play of all the things that was wrong with this book. But let me break it down to y'all without adding another, 15 minutes to this already long video. Plot was shit. There was some interesting aspects about the plot that I liked, but it went nowhere. It just went nowhere. Kat was a white savior who was the woke white person who announced to the world that she cared about social justice and black people and that you shouldn't make fun of the queers. There were racist comments saying, why would a black person come to this school when you have the twins in the corner talking about how much their family lost during the Confederate War or the Civil War? Why would any black person want to come here? Red flags. We had people making fun of lesbians. We had the quirky little Asian girl thinking it was okay to party and to be a bitch and to treat humans like less than. There were the anti-Semitic themes within this novel regarding the fact that this perfect race of vampires is hiding underground, waiting for their time to rise above and become the top dogs again, because this disease has completely kept them from being able to hunt freely. We had comments about colonialism and how, no, my mom loves my dad. He just met her during the British trade and he wore her down. It's not like that. It was a lot of things and more. And the only interesting thing that I liked about it was the near HIV plot that kind of could have gone somewhere, but didn't. Because the plot of that is that they have a weird disease, or humans carry a rare disease that if a vampire bites down and drinks their blood, they immediately die and turn into like nothing. And that's why all the older vampires are dead, and we have a vast new set of younger vampires who don't know what they're doing with their lives because we have no guidance. And the only cure that we have potentially found isn't really a cure because it just gives us like fake blood to live off of. And we're not really looking for a cure because then capitalism would fall apart. Because then how are we going to sell this fake blood when we've healed the blood bags that we can drink from? I had high hopes for this. I wanted it to be everything regarding queers and vampires and dark academia and enemy and friends to enemies to friends to lovers. I had such high hopes for this. It was like everything right up my alley. And then it all like fell apart within the first few pages. Like literally she was like the token straight friend, you know, and then she sat there and was like contemplating her sexuality and was like, no, I can't possibly like boys and girls because my gay friend said that I am too straight. And that realizing what my sexuality was, it doesn't actually happen. You just pop out of the womb waving the flag of your choice. And if you don't pop out of the womb waving that little flag, then you have to be straight and cis. I just, like, this book gets me on such a different type of heated that I probably shouldn't have worn a velvet sweater with an undershirt for this segment of the book, of this video. But here we are. I hate this book. Like, I rarely ever say I hate a book. Like, I will say, like, oh, I wasn't the biggest fan of this book, I was disappointed. I hate this book. Like, I saw it in Barnes & Noble, and I was tempted to be like one of those conservative fuckers who turn around like Biden's like autobiography or Obama's biography and just flip it around because giggles. I just wanted to turn it around so that way no one's thought to look at this book. Like, you saw the book and you go, oh, it's turned around, why? But then I realized if I flipped it around like one of those assholes, more people are going to go to it and be like, why is it flipped over? And look at the cover and be like interested by it and read the synopsis and potentially buy it. So I was like, we're not going to be that. We're just going to let it die. I wish it would, like, I just need to know which editor, which agent looked at this book and was like, yes, pick it up. And then which editor proceeded to read it and then go, huh, there is absolutely nothing wrong with this book. Proceed to publishing. And which beta readers, which sensitivity readers went through and was like, nothing is wrong with this book. Publish, 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 publish. Release the arcs. Release the floodgates. Send it up. Like, it was just so bad. And like, the concept of it was interesting. And it could have been so much more. But instead, it just leaned into like this white savior thing that I couldn't like even fathom how far down this pipeline you wanted to go to. Like, you're so far down the white savior pipeline, you're probably gonna go loop back around to the conservative pipeline. Like, like, it just felt like it was that the person in college who grew up super conservative and then found out that, you know, things aren't great if you look at it from this perspective, and then went super hard to the left and doesn't know when to shut up, or when the who feel like they have to overcompensate for the fact that they're white and cis and straight, and they wrote this book. They were like, yeah, I'm gonna try to fix it and be better, and then overcompensated, overshot, and now it's too white savior. And I just need to understand, like, who approved this book, who sat there and was like, yeah, this is appropriate, this is good, this is great. If it's not clear enough, I will not be recommending this book to anyone. Not even in the slightest. I will not be reading any more Sasha Lawrence books. And if I see any of a friend think about reading it. Like, if someone were to be like on Instagram, be like, oh, someone recommended this, I'll be like, don't. Maybe one of these days I will write that like sapphic vampire dark academia friends to lovers nonsense. But like, this book was not it. And if any of y'all want to recommend it to your queer or brown or black friends because, oh yeah, points were made, I strongly recommend you do not do that and you pick up any different book. Recommend them any other book. Like, genuinely, any other book. Because this was like on different levels of like what the fuckery and like just upsetting. It was just upsetting. But that is it for the books that I was most disappointed with in 2022. If y'all follow my channel, it's not a surprise necessarily. I rant about these books, I review them, all that fun stuff. But if you guys want me to do more of these videos, I do them once a year. If you want to see more of my progress reading some of these books throughout 2023, let me know in the comments. I'll try to do vlogs or more reviews. I was a little lax on reviews these past, I guess, a couple years. So I will be better about that in 2023. It's one of my goals. But until next time, hit like, subscribe, and comment. And hopefully you guys have had more success with your reads than I have, because I feel like 2022 was kind of like a mid-level reading year for me. But until then, I'll chat with you guys in my comments and everywhere else. Bye.